life getting going.
Pass electricity through it, like lightning, and the precursors of life may spark. In 1952, a celebrated experiment does just that. Simple amino acids are created in a test tube by Hal Urey and this man, Stanley Miller. But they lose favor as colleagues insist early Earth lacks the right conditions, a so-called reducing atmosphere. But now we know the Orpheus impact may have produced that atmosphere. But suppose there is no impact. How does our planet fare?
Earth Mach 1 would just be ocean. You might see a few small pieces of land sticking up, a little bit of Tibet, maybe the top of Hawaii, Mount Everest, but it'd be essentially covered with water. Without the impact, we definitely not have humans on the Earth. This documentary might be being made by other life forms, but they definitely not be humans.
We can only speculate about the creatures that evolve on Earth Mach 1.
It's really fun to try to figure out what life would be like on the Earth. Would we have intelligent life? If we hadn't had the lunar forming impact, I think life on land would be very different. In fact, there might not be life on land at all.
And with no moon to slow our spin, Earth is hostile and frantic.
You would have a very fast rotating Earth. With just the sun and no moon, we'd have very fast days, about 3 times as fast as we have today. Sun up, sun down would all come much quicker. Everything that goes on during the day would be much faster.
And a grotesque climate. Winds howling at hundreds of miles an hour. Non-stop dust storms. No human could evolve here.
So you really have to turn to the aquatic environment and think, well, what in the aquatic environment would be considered intelligent? Octopus and its relatives are all rather intelligent. They can do things like actually build little houses for themselves with their tentacles. They can, to some extent, have feelings. They have eyes that are almost dead ringers for vertebrate eyes. They're absolutely fascinating. And so you sort of have to picture that the cephalopods, the octopus and the squid and so on, are really going to be the geniuses of a moonless Earth.
But with the moon, those cephalopods don't evolve to rule Earth Mach 2, or even our oceans. Most perish in the impact 65 million years ago that slays the dinosaurs. Mass extinctions occur about once every 100 million years. In the past, the moon could have shielded Earth from such impacts, but statistically the chances are small.
To an evolutionary biologist, I don't really care as much about statistics. All I need is one impact that would have affected evolution. And the fascinating thing is that there's no way to prove it. There could have been a time that the moon actually protected us, actually saved us by being at the right place at the right time and intercepting an impact that otherwise would have done severe damage to life on Earth. In other words, caused a mass extinction.
The moon may have saved our planet. It's about to become our stepping stone to other planets.
As chance is a very important aspect in planetary growth, the moon can be viewed as a symbol of luck. If a tiny dust grain were moved very slightly early in the history of planetary growth, by the width of a human hair even, that could affect a collision a million years later. Orpheus might have missed Earth altogether.
Perhaps sending it careening into Venus.
This could produce a system which would be very similar to our terrestrial planet system today, except that Venus would be left with the large moon rather than Earth.
Leaving any intelligent life on Earth marooned on Earth.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Lunar Prospector spacecraft on a voyage to rediscover the moon.
But since we have the moon, we have the chance to colonize the solar system, and we're on the way again.
I've always looked at the moon as a complete world. People tend to forget it is a world. It's a very big place. The surface area of the moon is equal to North and South America combined.
But despite a fleet of probes and 6 Apollo landings, our celestial partner remains a relative stranger.
Here we are with a complete world that we know virtually nothing about. I make the analogy quite frequently that if you had 6 crews spread over California and they worked 3 days, you'd never found the gold, you'd never found the oil.
And you'd never have found the water. Water delivered billions of years ago, it's thought, by comets. Deep in dark craters at the lunar poles, ice may lie preserved. The clue comes in 1998 when Binder's probe, Lunar Prospector, detects hydrogen, a possible sign of water.
The amount of water that we're flying over right now is roughly equivalent to that we think is found frozen in the polar regions of the moon using the data from Lunar Prospector. If this is the case, then we are ready for lunar colonization.
If water's confirmed, it's worth its weight in gold.
We wanted to get people back studying the moon and understanding that this is the future of humanity and it's the beginning of the colonization of the solar system. And I believe the Prospector has done that. I want to see humanity on the moon, and I want to see humanity spread throughout the solar system, and this is the beginning point.
As Lunar Prospector runs low on fuel, Binder has an idea. He targets a crater at the South Pole. Would a deliberate impact splash up the proof of water? Sadly, no. But it was a long shot. David Gump is the new generation, a space entrepreneur who plans a commercially funded mission to the moon. At his base in the Mojave Desert, California, Gump has the prototype of a reusable rocket. From Earth orbit, it's to launch a lander to search for water.
There is no actual proof that water is there. So our robot will land at probably the South Pole, near what's called the Peak of Eternal Light, and then go into one of these permanently dark craters at the poles to see if there is ice that could be recovered to make our first space oasis. If we can confirm that useful quantities of water actually exist at the lunar poles, it means we could refuel our spaceships there, and it means that missions to Mars and missions deeper into the solar system finally become feasible. It's the first time we could actually sort of live off the land as we explore space.
Gump's vision hinges on lunar water. It sustains life and, split into liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, makes rocket fuel. His moon is a spaceport.
I think the moon is crucial to having a stepping stone to the rest of the solar system. The solar system is a really big place, so having a training ground where we can prove ourselves and our equipment close to home, so if there is a problem, you can call for help, is crucially important. If you're on the way to Mars and you have a problem, you're pooched.
If there's water, lunar colonies are next, but not the cool modules of science fiction. More the adobe structures of the Mexican deserts and the US Southwest. Moon pioneers will fashion their accommodation from lunar dirt. NASA is taking note.
The next time when we go to the moon, our suits are going to be very high technology, but we will have to depend on basic natural resources for our dwellings.
The watchword is economy, living off the land. The first moon dwellings could resemble these huts at a museum of traditional building in California.
Every pound of material we carry from here to the moon, it costs 2 to 3 pounds of gold. Therefore, it's vital to be able to utilize what exists there.
Tubes filled with moon dust and stacked in coils.
It seems to be ironic that we are going back into history. It really is not going back into history. It's taking the best of what civilization has given us and moving it forward into the future.
Like the roller coaster? Here, space architect Thangavelu meets rocket scientist Anthony Zuparo. The topic is transportation and the cheapest way to get off the moon.
You think this is going to be similar to what we find on the moon, right?
I suspect so.
this lift us from the moon? A magnetic levitation ride that puts us on course for Mars. NASA is funding development. With 1/6 the gravity of Earth, it's 100 times cheaper to launch space vehicles from the moon. But imagine spending 3 years in here, headed for Jupiter.
Weer geen promotie gemaakt. De Power Zone, vanavond om 12 uur op Discovery Channel. Met Discovery.
Drenkeling Zuidkant Maasbrug, over.
Waar we ook zijn. Wie we ook zijn. Allemaal delen we die fascinatie voor het licht dat onze adem doet stokken.
Silhouet vrachtauto, grijze Saab, kenteken IF36GD.
Donderdagavond op Discovery is Crime Nights. Elke donderdag vanaf 9 uur.
Space is horrible. You have to have some gravity or your immune system doesn't work. Your bones become chalk. You gotta have gravity. The only way to get gravity is to have this big spinning device and you're thrown against the walls.
And that's what Zupero plans, a gigantic ring inflated with water ice from the moon, ice stored at a filling station in lunar orbit.
You don't build your spaceship, you inflate it. You have a plastic bag the size of a football stadium that looks like a huge tire, and you inflate the walls with water, and you've got an ice spaceship.
The ring spins, and within it the travelers have gravity. Water ice stored in the walls powers a steam rocket. For the return, refueling is on one of the icy moons of Jupiter.
I never would have figured that a steam-powered rocket, a clunker, would take 100 times more than the next best rocket. And that means that you would take 100 people from here to Jupiter and to all the moons of Jupiter, Ganymede, Callisto, Europa. Absolutely incredible.
All that Zupero needs to make his steam rocket work is the power plant from a nuclear submarine. He might also recruit some submariners.
Submarines were the first platforms that the space program turned to find out how people would react to long-duration trips in isolation with just each other. And they learned a lot from the submariners. And I think submariners are the kind of people who'd be interested and who would find the opportunity to do something like that an exciting prospect.
The drawback for the moment is the nuclear factor.
A world that would permit nuclear explosive-propelled spacecraft would be far different from the present. Nuclear weapons would be totally abolished. If we should ever achieve that agreeable social order, marvelous opportunities abound.
As a yachtsman, Solem draws a parallel with his own nuclear spacecraft, Medusa.
Well, what this beautiful America's Cup yacht, America One, has in common with the Medusa spacecraft is the spinnaker. The spinnaker is a very lightweight sail launched ahead of the craft, and it's driven directly by the wind. In the case of the spacecraft,